Well, talk about a bombshell. Just when I thought life couldn't throw any more surprises my way, John drops a bomb on me. He wants a divorce. And not just any divorce, he wants to ditch our responsibilities as parents. Nice timing, right? I mean, who does that at a funeral? As if my shock wasn't enough, John goes on about some woman he wants to marry who's allergic to the idea of kids. And here I am, thinking Charlie's struggles are the only weight on my shoulders. Turns out, I've been footing the bill for his medical bills and child support just to keep my bank account on a downward spiral. And then he has the audacity to call it a relief? Yeah, right. My blood boiled at the thought of this man being Charlie's father. Clear-headed on the outside, but inside I was seething. So I swallow my pride and agree to the divorce. But not without making sure I get the house, a small victory in this mess. And of course he couldn't leave without ruining the funeral, turning pale as I read Charlie's will. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife, but I knew it was time to fight back. Hi there, I'm Natasha, a 42-year-old housewife turned freelance translator. I used to be tied to a company, but now I enjoy the freedom of working for myself. My husband John, 3 years my senior, was once a client at my old job. We tied the knot when I was 29, and the following year, our son Charlie came into the world. But John's involvement in fatherhood, let's just say, it was lacking. Charlie's life was a constant battle against his frail health. Despite my guilt over not being able to give him a stronger body, he faced every medical setback with incredible bravery. For 12 years he fought, but when he hit 12, things took a turn for the worse. His small body couldn't handle the strain anymore, and as the rainy season hit, so did a relentless cough. Hospital visits became routine, treatments a daily ordeal, but his condition only worsened. Mom, sorry for being hospitalized again. Don't be sorry, you're going to get better, right? Yeah, I'll try my best, Charlie said with a weak smile. I felt tears welling up, but I couldn't cry in front of him. I held it in as best I could. When Charlie finally fell asleep for a bit, I called John, but no matter how many times I called, he didn't answer. Maybe he was at a business meeting, so I switched to messaging. John's reply came the next morning. Seeing his message, I called him immediately. This time he picked up right away. What now? So early in the morning. Don't what now me? Why won't you come? Charlie's fighting so hard. Well, my being there won't cure his sickness, right? And hey, the hospital bills must be piling up again. Tell the doctor to discharge him as soon as possible. What? How can you say that? Can't hear you. I'm off to work now. Wait. John hung up without listening to me. He'd always been indifferent towards Charlie, but he'd never been this cruel before. I clenched my phone, shaking with anger. Even as the rainy season ended and summer began, Charlie's condition didn't improve. The doctors doubted he would make it to winter, so I cut back on work to be with him as much as possible. Mom, you've been with me from morning to evening lately. Is your work okay? It's fine. I'm managing everything from home, so don't worry. If you say so. Charlie didn't seem convinced. He probably thought my work had dried up because of him. After that conversation, to avoid causing him any more stress, I started bringing my laptop and working right in front of him. Charlie loved books and spent most of his days reading. He also liked studying and would join the hospital school when he felt up to it. I wanted to let him do anything he wished, but John, on the other hand, seemed very displeased with me, not only avoiding visiting Charlie but also constantly complaining at home. Hey, is that kid still not discharged? Staying in a private room, huh? What a waste of money. How can you say that when your son is fighting so hard? Why don't you visit him for once? I'm busy, okay? You visiting him is enough. John never changed his attitude and never visited Charlie in the hospital, even though he was Charlie's father. I knew Charlie must be feeling lonely, but I understood that forcing John to visit against his will wouldn't help, so I didn't push it further. By this time, John often came home late, reeking of alcohol. He claimed it was for client entertaining, but the lipstick on his laundered shirts and receipts from hotels hinted at an affair. He couldn't make time for Charlie but had time for some other woman. My love for John had run out, but I feared that divorcing him would sadden Charlie. I thought so and endured it. Meanwhile, Charlie's condition worsened. Called him by his doctor, I was told something shocking. "I'm sorry, but he only has about a month left." What? Doctor, isn't there anything you can do? There's not much more we can do. As I broke down in tears, the doctor assured me, "We'll do our best till the very end." For about half a month, we continued treatment, consulting with the doctor, but as expected, Charlie's body weakened further. "Am I going to be gone soon?" "What are you saying? There's so much more you want to do, right?" I encouraged him with those words but cried in private, away from Charlie's sight. Finally, when the doctor said that further treatment was pointless, I decided to take Charlie home to spend his last moments. "Are we going home?" "Yes, the doctor said a change of scenery for a few days would be good." Yay! Charlie's weak yet childlike response made me fight back tears. I told John about it, but all he said was "ha," and left the house. This man is beyond redemption. I had completely lost hope in that man. The discharge was scheduled for the next evening, so I busied myself with preparations and paperwork. While packing Charlie's belongings, he suddenly asked, "Mom, do you love Dad?" Surprised by the sudden question, I stopped what I was doing. Charlie continued without waiting for my response, "Dad doesn't seem interested in me or you, so if you don't love Dad, I want you to divorce and live your life, Charlie." He must have realized that things weren't going well between John and me. But as a parent, I couldn't let him worry about us till the end. I quickly put on a smile and replied, "What are you talking about? I love your dad, and he cares about us too. He's just too busy to visit, so don't worry, okay?" But okay. I guess Charlie didn't seem convinced, but he stopped pursuing the matter after that. He fell asleep, and I breathed a sigh of relief by his side. 2 days later, Charlie passed away at home. John never showed up till the end, and I stayed by Charlie's side, holding his hand. "Charlie, Charlie," I cried out loud, clinging to his cooling body, remembering everything from the moment he came into my life. The doctor and a nurse who had been with us since Charlie was young came to mourn with us and explained the next steps. One of them handed me a letter from Charlie's bag. "This is from Charlie. He said to give it to you if anything happened." From Charlie, I received the letter expressing my gratitude to the doctor and the nurse. I was alone without John's help, and Charlie was suffering from his illness. I can only be grateful to those who kindly supported us through this difficult time. After they left, I opened the letter beside Charlie. The content made me cry out in surprise. "What is this?" Charlie's letter contained not only his gratitude but also something shocking. Reading it, I felt my blood boil. Even as the funeral director came to discuss arrangements, my mind was full of the letter's content. Still, I had to decide on the details for Charlie's sake, planning a small, homey funeral. Then the day before the funeral, John finally showed his face, still reeking of alcohol. I had no energy left to confront him. John, noticing my exhaustion, casually commented, "You've aged," as he took out more alcohol from the fridge to drink. "Tomorrow is Charlie's funeral. Where have you been?" "I told you I was at work. What's with all these complaints?" Why did I marry such a man? No, without him, I wouldn't have met Charlie. My mind was in turmoil. Charlie is no longer with us. Oh yeah, that's right. His attitude, as if Charlie was some distant relative, filled me with a simmering anger. But arguing with him was pointless, so I decided to focus on the funeral arrangements for the next day. Lucky me, no more child-rearing expenses. Let's get divorced. What? I couldn't hide my shock when John suddenly said this during the funeral preparations. I knew he was selfish, but this was too much. There's a woman I want to marry, but she doesn't want kids, so with Charlie alive, the child support and medical expenses would drain my money. Ah, what a relief. How terrible. I felt a chill run through me that such a man was Charlie's father. As my head cleared, my anger boiled over. I agreed to the divorce right then. "I'll take the house, so get out as soon as you can. Just wait until after the funeral." "Fine." With that, John left. On the day of the funeral, I read Charlie's will. John turned pale while relatives glared at him with fierce faces. Now it was time for my counterattack. The will I read, written by Charlie, exposed John's affair. Until I read the will at the funeral, John had been playing the role of a grieving father, crying loudly. How could such a letter? No, it's not true. It's a prank, right, Natasha? I felt sorry for not visiting because of work, but this is too much. John tried to deny it, appearing very pathetic. I silently took out an envelope from my bag and thrust photos in front of John. What? You took pictures? Troubled by being caught in a photo? Like being seen with the woman you're arm in arm with in this picture? No. As John stumbled over his words, his face still pale, I smiled sweetly and asked the relatives to pass around a few photos I had. Whispers of disgust and small cries of shock arose from all around. Despicable, not visiting his frail son but with this woman in such a scandalous manner. The glares at John intensified, and he slumped down in his seat. I then presented John with the divorce papers. He looked up at me in shock, his voice cracking as if he was about to cry. You didn't pay attention to me because you were always nursing him. It was just a fling. Forgive me. I don't want a divorce. Not paying attention? You're not a child. I repeatedly asked you to help me nurse him, but you always ran away, claiming work as an excuse. But nursing is dirty. As soon as John said that, he disappeared from my view. When I looked down, he was crawling on the floor with my father-in-law standing over him, breathing heavily. What do you mean nursing your own son is dirty? Enough with the jokes. A parent who doesn't care for their child isn't a parent at all. You're the lowest of the low. My in-laws had always adored Charlie. They celebrated every hospital discharge with a meal, bought Charlie his favorite things, and never missed a visit. They had been covering for John, believing his excuses about being busy at work, never imagining their own son could be such a disgrace. Tears streamed their faces as they glared at John, who sat in disbelief, clutching his cheek where he'd been struck. Natasha, I'm so sorry. We had no idea. If we knew he was such a man, we would have encouraged you to divorce him sooner. We are truly sorry. They began to bow deeply, and I hurried to lift them up. It wasn't their fault. Charlie loved his grandparents, and their presence was one reason I hadn't divorced John. You guys are not to blame. Look, Charlie's letter says thank you and stay healthy. Charlie and I both love you very much. Natasha, thank you. Sorry, Charlie. My mother-in-law hugged me, sobbing quietly. My father-in-law was also crying, apologizing to me. John, finally coming to his senses, stood up and pointed at me, yelling, Don't be ridiculous. She's just an old lady who couldn't even take care of her husband, a failure of a wife. John, you. As my father-in-law lunged towards John, I stepped in front of John. He looked at me with a fearful yet defiant glare. What, you got something to say? Not really. This is reality. No one here is on your side. And make sure to pay back the money you've borrowed from many people, haven't you? How do you know about that? At my words, relatives who had lent John money began murmuring after reading Charlie's letter. I had contacted the relatives. Charlie had overheard John's expensive activities involving a woman from a nightclub who loved lavish things like brand products and overseas trips. John, paying for all of it, could never afford such a lifestyle on his salary alone. Realizing this, I had checked if anyone had lent him money, and to my surprise, it wasn't just John's relatives, but mine as well, under the pretense of Charlie's medical expenses. While I had initially informed them just to thank and promise repayment, with the current situation, they realized John had used the money not for Charlie but for his affair. Don't joke with me. I lent that money thinking it was for Charlie. Give me back my $20,000 right now. Same here. I want my $40,000 back. These words set off a cascade of demands from various relatives for the money they had lent. John looked around, his face turning even paler with each claim. Then he turned to me, smiling weakly. Natasha, we're a couple, right? You'll help me, won't you? What? Are you serious? You didn't help with nursing, didn't contribute to the medical expenses or even the living expenses, and instead borrowed from everyone for your own selfish needs. Unbelievable, why would I help you? Don't say things like that, John said with a pathetic voice. He slumped back down, seemingly out of energy to retort. I looked down at him, ready to deliver the final blow, and called to the entrance. Cheryl, please come in. Cheryl? Why is she here? John's face was a picture of sheer panic as he stared at the entrance. The woman named Cheryl walked towards me hesitantly. She looked plain, with light makeup, a stark contrast to the woman in the photos. I invited her. On Charlie's last day, she was with you, right? I thought it would be nice if she could attend the funeral. I'm sorry about this. Save it, no need for such superficial words. Cheryl closed her mouth tightly at my response, her face as pale as John's. I handed her some documents. I called you here today to sign these. Please read them carefully and sign. $100,000? I can't pay that. It's impossible. It's not for you to decide whether you can pay or not. Cheryl looked at me with pleading eyes, but I wasn't about to let her off easily. His gesture irritated me, but I had no intention of snapping over such a thing. Then John, trembling, stood between Cheryl and me. What now? It's my fault, so please forgive Cheryl. Demanding $100,000 from her is just too cruel. Why should I? I'm merely asking for compensation for the affair. John raised his eyebrows and sighed heavily while screaming inside that I'm the one who wants to sigh. I waited for John's next words. That's because Cheryl is fragile, unlike you. How do you expect her to earn $100,000? How cruel can you be, John? Cheryl clung to John's back, both seemingly lost in each other. The cold stares weren't only from me. The relatives were ready to give them a piece of their mind, but I decided to add fuel to the fire. Cheryl, your son is hospitalized, right? Son? Cheryl flinched. I continued, he's 12, just like Charlie was. Always in the hospital. Your ex-husband took custody, right? Tough with all the hospital and treatment costs, not to mention the bed fees. You must be getting quite a demand for child support, aren't you? How do you know that? Cheryl looked at me as if she'd seen a ghost. John was frozen in shock. I pulled out some documents from my bag and handed them to John. He shakily read them, then suddenly pushed Cheryl away. Hey, what's this? Divorced with a kid? You never told me. Didn't you say the money was for your family living far away? I didn't lie. My son is my family. So I've been with a used woman. Where's the true love you were after? My money. You were only after my body. Cheryl threw her shoe at John, enraged. John lunged at her. They started brawling like children, but fortunately, a security guard intervened. I approached the disheveled pair with a smile. John, please sign the divorce papers and arrange for the alimony. Cheryl, I won't reduce your compensation by a single cent. And your ex-husband said something about your affairs being a sickness that can't be cured. Seems like you have a few partners, so with that kind of leeway, expect enforced payments for the child support, treatment costs, and alimony. That's impossible. John hung his head, speechless, and Cheryl was led away by the security, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I apologized to each relative for the disturbance, and they comforted me, bringing me to tears. After that, my divorce from John was finalized. We also agreed on the amount of alimony he had to pay, just as I had requested. This incident infuriated his parents tremendously. Moreover, the extended family was outraged to discover they had been deceived too, giving him the cold shoulder. Of course, he was asked to return the money he embezzled, and it seems like he borrowed it from some shady sources to repay the debt. He's been working his fingers to the bone with multiple jobs, but the repayment is so huge that he's rumored to have nothing left for living expenses. Eventually, unable to keep up with the ballooning interest, last month he was taken away by some intimidating guys. His parents don't even intend to file a missing person report, so while I hope he's safe, I can't help but wish he suffers unimaginable pain. As for Cheryl, all the men she dated found out about her affairs and the child she had, cutting off all financial support. At 30, she's considered old for her line of work, struggling to attract clients, and eventually had to turn to her parents. She paid the alimony in one lump sum. However, she's since been sent to work on a farm on some island, with her wages going directly to her parents for debt repayment. As for me, I moved with Charlie's memorial tablet. I bought a house near the ocean, something Charlie always wanted, and now live there alone with the cat he wished for. I look forward to the times when my in-laws visit, and we reminisce about Charlie. Another letter from Charlie arrived for me. In it, he wrote in slightly blurred script about his gratitude, apologies for leaving for heaven first, and his wish to be my child again in another life. The letter ended with, "Mom, stay true to yourself, stay healthy, and live a long life," inspiring me to live my life for Charlie. Despite the sadness of not seeing my beloved child grow up, I'm living each day to the fullest.
My name is Sarah, a dedicated mother of 2 wonderful kids. Michael, my husband, is a hardworking man who spends most of his days at his job. We have a lovely 3-year-old daughter named Lily, and our youngest, Mia, is just a year old. Life is generally good for our ordinary family, but there's one thing that constantly nags at me. My mother-in-law, Linda. It feels like Linda comes over at the most inconvenient times, especially during dinner preparation. Without much warning, she walks into our home, just as she often does. It's not a fixed schedule, but she shows up around this time frequently enough that Lily hardly even looks away from her favorite cartoon. "Sarah, is this fried food again?" Linda's disapproval is evident. "That's not good. It's so oily. You need to take better care of Michael's stomach when he comes home tired from work. It's not good for the grandkids either." "But Lily really likes it," I reply hesitantly. "Well, that's because you only feed her junk. Look, I've made a creamy vegetable stew and minestrone for you. It's essential for the kids to get used to Western food from an early age." Linda starts setting the table with the large containers of creamy stew and minestrone she brought. It's a lot, enough to last for at least 3 days, and I feel a little down just looking at the stew, which is mostly just carrots and cabbage. "Come on, stop daydreaming. I'll take the food you made home with me, so go ahead and pack it up. It's not tasty, but we can't waste food." This is routine. Last time she visited unexpectedly, she replaced my clam chowder with her own fried chicken. Holding the still-warm container, she left without even looking at her grandchildren. Once the front door closed, Lily turned to me softly. "Grandma took my fried chicken again." My heart aches seeing my daughter's sad face. "Don't worry, there's a little bit of meat left. Just wait a moment." Yay! As I heat up the oil again, I feel relieved seeing Lily's joyful reaction to my words. However, my inner dissatisfaction remains. Linda has been overly intrusive since my marriage, but it's gotten worse over the last year. Every week, she shows up unannounced during dinner prep time. Initially, she would just criticize my cooking and parenting, then leave her creams due on the counter. But for the past 6 months, she started taking my food home with her, effectively ruining our meal. I can't imagine Linda, who lives alone since my father-in-law passed away, eating all 3 servings. She's probably throwing it away. As I prepare baby food and distract the kids, I manage to cook. It's tough, but seeing my family's happy faces keeps me going. Yet my fried chicken, braised pork, mapo tofu, and hamburgers, all of it gets taken away. I grew up in a family that ran a restaurant, and my dad taught me how to cook. So I'm confident in my culinary skills. And yes, I think my food tastes better than Linda's overly sweet creams do. It irks me to have my skills negated by her. But with Lily and Mia in the picture, I've been struggling to stand up to Linda, their grandma. More cream stew? Michael, who comes home after the kids have gone to sleep, makes a face when he sees dinner. Since only Lily's share of fried chicken was left, I served Michael a large platter of the cream stew. What can I do? It's what Linda brings over. If you don't like it, you tell her. "Yeah, I guess." Michael pokes at the stew, as non-committal as ever. She shows up without considering Mia's nap time, and even takes away Lily's favorite foods right in front of her. Well, she's lonely since Dad died. That was 2 years ago. How much longer do I have to put up with this? "Yeah, I guess." Michael is usually reliable, but he avoids confrontation when Linda is involved. Another pointless conversation goes by, and I let out a deep sigh. The only silver lining is that she hasn't suggested moving in. One day, tired of the same old routine, Linda says something different when she drops by during dinner as usual. "Sarah, this Christmas, everyone's gathering at our place." "What?" I exclaim in surprise. "After Michael's father passed away last year, we couldn't really do anything, right? We've been relying on relatives from his side since the funeral, so I'm inviting them to our home as a way of saying thank you." I try to hide my reluctance, but it's challenging. Linda has always been in the habit of hosting family gatherings at her brother-in-law's or her own childhood home for Christmas and family reunions. Hosting it at her place is a significant change. "Sounds exhausting," I respond with a lack of enthusiasm to Linda's arrogant tone, wondering how she plans to host people suddenly when we've always gathered elsewhere for such occasions. She frowns at me, looking like she's dealing with someone of lesser intelligence. "You're not just a bystander here. You'll be helping too." "What? Come over on the 24th and help clean up. Your sisters-in-law will be there as well, and we'll need all the hands we can get." Stunned by Linda's audacious decision, I try to quickly object. "But Mia is so young. Just use a baby carrier or something. That's how women used to do it back in the day." "Maybe, but you're also in charge of the full-course Christmas meal. Don't you dare repackage store-bought food or cook anything that tastes bad. I don't want to be embarrassed." "What? You can't be serious." "I'm thinking of inviting Michael's dad's relatives on one day and my sister's family and our daughter on another. It'll be a busy holiday." Although she's complaining, I can sense a happy aura coming from her. "Hold on, the one who's going to be busy is me, not you. As the daughter-in-law of this family's eldest son, do your duty properly, okay?" Having had her say, my satisfied Linda leaves the meal untouched and heads out, leaving me stunned and my surprised son behind. She doesn't forget to pack the shrimp gratin that just needs to be baked, though. That night, when I tell Michael about it, he's as bewildered as I am. "What? She's planning a party from Christmas, even inviting Dad's side of the family when he's not here?" "Yes, that's the plan." "Well, maybe Mom's lonely." I finally lose my temper at Michael's predictable response. Think about what it's like for me, always being pushed around. Seeing Michael's face turn to an unmistakable, "uh-oh," he goes silent, but even he realizes that this time it's too much and lets out a resigned sigh. "All right, I'll handle the cleaning and entertaining the relatives." "Really? I'm glad to hear Michael's proposal. It gives me some direction. But can you still cook the full-course Christmas meal?" Just for this year, let's keep Mom's reputation intact. Plus, everyone in the family loves your cooking." As he pleads, Michael is staring at the meatloaf Linda left for us. I mean, it's hard to say no after making a concession. "Fine, just for this year." "Thanks, man. I can't wait for Sarah's Christmas feast." "Geez, you're in high spirits, aren't you?" Being praised isn't so bad, and I don't mind cooking for people, so I brace myself that it's just for this time and agree to prepare a full-course Christmas meal. When I tell Linda that Michael will stay over to help with cleaning, she makes a displeased face and says, "How could you let the man of the house do such things?" But he insisted, and I don't mind. She seemed reasonably satisfied seeing Michael bustling around at her parents' home for my sake. As the days passed, I found myself caught in the whirlwind of preparations for Linda's grand Christmas gathering. The pressure was building, and I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. Linda's constant suggestions and instructions about the menu were driving me crazy. "Sarah, don't forget the creamed spinach, and make sure to prepare a fancy salad. Oh, and we can't have Christmas without a traditional roast, can we?" I nodded, feeling like I was slowly losing control over the holiday meal I had reluctantly agreed to prepare. It was supposed to be a collaborative effort with Linda, but it felt more like she was taking over everything. Michael tried to mediate between us, but it was challenging. He wanted to keep the peace and make everyone happy, but I could see the tension building in him as well. Our relationship was strained, and it seemed like Linda's presence was taking a toll on our marriage. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day of shopping for ingredients and decorations, Michael and I sat down to talk. "Sarah, I know this is tough, but please try to understand Mom's perspective. She's been through a lot since Dad passed away, and she's trying to hold on to some sense of normalcy." I sighed, feeling torn between my frustration and sympathy for Linda. I get that, Michael, but it feels like she's taking over everything. I agreed to cook the Christmas meal, but now it seems like she's planning the entire event without me. Michael looked conflicted, torn between supporting me and not wanting to upset his mother. I'll talk to her again, try to find a middle ground. But please, just for this Christmas, can you go along with her plans? It would mean a lot to her. I reluctantly agreed, hoping that this compromise would ease the tension in our family. As the days passed, I continued to prepare dishes for the feast, trying to balance Linda's demands with my own culinary preferences. It was a challenging task, but I was determined to make this Christmas special for everyone. However, the closer the holiday approached, the more I felt the weight of the expectations and the mounting pressure. I couldn't help but wonder if I had made a mistake by agreeing to this in the first place. As Christmas Eve drew nearer, the stress of preparing for Linda's grand gathering began to take its toll on me. The pressure to meet her expectations weighed heavily on my shoulders. I spent countless hours in the kitchen, meticulously preparing each dish from scratch. The creamy spinach, fancy salad, traditional roast, and all the other items on Linda's extensive menu were lovingly cooked and garnished. Michael had tried his best to help, but he was also caught in the crossfire between his mother's demands and my desire for a peaceful holiday. The tension in our home was palpable. Even Lily and Mia seemed to sense the unease, their usual cheerful spirits somewhat dampened by the atmosphere. I knew I had to keep it together for their sake, but it was becoming increasingly challenging. On Christmas Eve morning, Linda arrived early, ready to supervise every detail of the preparations. She watched my every move as I put the finishing touches on the dishes. Her critical eye never left me, and I felt like I was being judged at every turn. As the hours passed, the house filled with the mouth-watering aroma of the Christmas feast. The table was set with care, adorned with festive decorations and flickering candles. Guests began to arrive, and the house buzzed with the excitement of the holiday. Despite my exhaustion and the mounting stress, I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment as I looked at the beautifully presented dishes. This was my chance to prove myself, to show Linda that I could handle the responsibility she had entrusted me with. As the meal began, the first few bites were met with polite compliments from the guests. Linda's face lit up with satisfaction as she received praise for her meticulously planned Christmas gathering. I kept a watchful eye on Michael, who was doing his best to mediate between his mother and me. But as the meal progressed, something unexpected happened. Sophia, Linda's sister, began to compliment the dishes one by one, praising their flavors and presentation. She seemed genuinely impressed by the food. Sophia's words caught the attention of the other guests, and soon the entire table was filled with compliments and appreciation for the meal. Linda's smile faltered as she realized that the credit for the delicious food was being showered on me, not her. I watched as Linda's face turned from satisfaction to frustration. She had been so focused on maintaining her reputation as the perfect host that she hadn't noticed the genuine joy and gratitude from the guests. It was a bittersweet moment for me, as I had finally earned the recognition I craved, but it had come at the cost of Linda's disappointment. As the evening continued, the tension in the room grew, and it was clear that Linda was no longer enjoying the gathering. Michael tried to defuse the situation, but the damage had been done. In the end, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. I had proven myself as a capable cook and had earned the respect of Linda's relatives. It was a small victory, but it meant the world to me. As the guests departed, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held for our family. The holiday had brought both joy and conflict, and it was clear that our relationship with Linda would never be the same. The days following the Christmas gathering were filled with a palpable tension in our household. Linda had been noticeably distant, and our interactions were strained. It was clear that she was still upset about the events of that evening. Michael, caught in the middle of the conflict between his mother and me, tried his best to mediate. He urged Linda to talk to me and address her feelings, but she remained stubbornly silent. One evening, after Linda had left our home, Michael and I sat down to discuss the situation. It had become increasingly clear that the rift between Linda and me needed to be resolved. Sarah, I think it's time for a conversation with Mom, Michael said, his voice filled with concern. This tension is tearing our family apart, and it's not healthy for any of us. I nodded in agreement, feeling the weight of the situation on my shoulders. You're right, Michael. It's been hard on all of us, especially the kids. But I don't know how to approach her. She's been so distant and unwilling to talk. Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I'll talk to her again and try to convince her to sit down with you. Maybe if I'm there as well, we can have an open and honest conversation. I appreciated Michael's willingness to help, and we made plans to confront Linda together. It was clear that something needed to change for the sake of our family's well-being. A few days later, we gathered in Linda's living room, the atmosphere heavy with tension. Linda looked uncomfortable, but she agreed to the meeting. Michael took the lead, addressing Linda gently but firmly. Mom, we can't continue like this. The tension between you and Sarah is affecting all of us, especially the kids. We need to find a way to resolve our differences and move forward as a family. Linda remained silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on the floor. Finally she spoke, her voice filled with a mixture of frustration and sadness. I just wanted everything to be perfect for Christmas. I didn't mean to overshadow Sarah's efforts or make her feel like she wasn't appreciated. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Linda, I understand that you wanted the best for the family, but it became overwhelming for me. I felt like my efforts were being dismissed, and it created a lot of stress. I just wanted to contribute to the holiday in my way. Tears welled up in Linda's eyes as she looked at me. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I never meant for it to come to this. We continued to talk, addressing our feelings and concerns openly and honestly. It was a difficult conversation, but it was also cathartic. Linda admitted that she had been struggling with her grief and had been trying to hold on to traditions to feel close to her late husband. In the end, we reached an understanding. We agreed to communicate better and find a way to celebrate holidays and family gatherings that honored both our traditions and contributions. It was a step toward healing the rift in our family. As the days passed, Linda and I gradually began to rebuild our relationship. It wasn't easy, but we both recognized the importance of family and the need to support each other. Our family gatherings became more harmonious, and the tension that had once hung in the air began to dissipate. Looking back, I realized that the Christmas gathering had been a turning point for our family. It had forced us to confront our issues and work towards a resolution. While there were still challenges ahead, I knew that with open communication and a commitment to understanding each other, we could overcome anything that came our way. With the tensions of the Christmas gathering finally resolved, our family embarked on a new chapter of our lives. It was a period of healing, growth, and understanding, as we learned to appreciate each other's strengths and differences. Linda and I, once at odds, found a way to coexist peacefully. We learned to compromise and work together to create memorable family gatherings that celebrated both our traditions. It was a slow process, but the effort we put into our relationship was worth it, for the sake of our family. Michael, as the bridge between his mother and me, played a crucial role in maintaining the newfound harmony in our household. He continued to support and mediate, ensuring that both Linda and I felt heard and valued. Our children, Lily and Mia, thrived in the improved atmosphere at home. They were no longer caught in the crossfire of our disagreements and were free to be their joyful, carefree selves. Their laughter and innocence reminded us of the importance of family unity. As the months passed, our family traditions evolved. We began to create new holiday rituals that incorporated elements from both Linda's and my backgrounds. Our gatherings became a blend of flavors, customs, and celebrations that reflected our unique family dynamic. I continued to cook for our family, but now it was a collaborative effort. Linda and I would plan the menu together, each contributing our favorite dishes. It became a bonding experience that allowed us to connect on a deeper level. Our Christmas gatherings were no longer a source of tension, but a time of joy and togetherness. We focused on what truly mattered, the love and support we had for one another. The holiday season was a reminder of the strength of our family bonds. Looking back, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the challenges we had faced. They had forced us to confront our differences and work towards a better understanding of each other. Our family had emerged from the ordeal stronger and more united than ever. As the years went by, our family continued to grow and change. Lily and Mia were joined by a new sibling, a little brother named Max. Our household was filled with the laughter and chaos of raising 3 children, and our family traditions continued to evolve. Through it all, Linda, Michael, and I remained a united front, dedicated to providing our children with a loving and supportive environment. We had learned that family was not about perfection, but about embracing each other's imperfections and finding strength in our differences. And so our family journey continued, filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a brighter future. We had weathered the storms of the past and emerged stronger than ever, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.